The air in the harbor fish market was thick with the suffocating stench of salt water, rotting seaweed, and raw desperation. It was a place where dreams went to die, replaced by the endless, grueling rhythm of survival. But for Maya Lin, it had been her entire world for the past 5 years. She stood behind a stained plastic counter, her hands clad in thick yellow rubber gloves that were slick with fish guts and freezing water. The icy wind of the early morning whipped her messy hair across her pale face, but she didn't stop her rhythmic, brutal work. Chop, slice, gut. Her once delicate fingers, which used to play Chopin on grand pianos and palatial estates, were now covered in deep, jagged scars from slipping knives and sharp fish scales. But every time the pain threatened to break her, she thought of him, Arthur, her husband, the man for whom she had given up the universe. Today was their 5th wedding anniversary, and more importantly, it was the day Arthur was officially being promoted to the chief financial officer of the prestigious Vanguard Corporation. Maya smiled, a rare, breathtaking expression that cut through the grime of her face as she glanced at the small velvet box hidden beneath her cash register. Inside rested a Rolex watch that had cost her 3 years of literal blood, sweat, and skipped meals. She had worked 16-hour shifts, gutting tuna and salmon, enduring the mockery of wealthy customers, all to pay for Arthur's tuition, his tailored suits, and his networking dinners. She had built his stepping stones out of her own bones. Just a little longer, Maya whispered to herself, wiping a smear of blood from her cheek with her forearm. Today, he will finally see that my sacrifices were worth it. Today, the 5-year bet is over. No one in the filthy, bustling market knew the truth about the quiet fish saleswoman. They didn't know that Maya Lin was actually Maya Sterling, the sole heiress to the Sterling Global Consortium, a trillion-dollar empire that controlled half the continent's shipping, banking, and real estate. 5 years ago, as a rebellious billionaire princess, she had fallen deeply in love with a brilliant but impoverished university student named Arthur. Her grandfather, the terrifying patriarch of the Sterling family, had forbidden the union, claiming that a poor man would only love her wealth, not her soul. Furious and idealistic, Maya had made a reckless, desperate bet with her grandfather. She would renounce her identity, freeze all her bank accounts, and live as a penniless commoner for exactly 5 years. If Arthur stayed by her side, loved her through poverty, and succeeded through his own merit, her grandfather would accept him and hand over the empire. If Arthur failed, she would have to return home and accept an arranged marriage to a ruthless corporate shark. For 5 years, Maya endured the smell of fish, the biting cold, and the exhaustion, hiding her identity perfectly. She watched Arthur rise from a struggling student to a successful executive, swelling with pride. Today was the exact day the 5-year contract expired. Tonight, she planned to take off her rubber gloves, put on the Rolex on his wrist, and finally tell him that he didn't just win a promotion, he had won the world. "Maya, 2 kilos of mackerel, make it quick!" A local restaurant owner shouted, snapping her out of her reverie. She nodded, grabbing a massive fish and bringing her cleaver down with practiced precision. Just as she was bagging the order, the chaotic noise of the market suddenly died down. The usual shouting of vendors and haggling of customers evaporated into a stunned, breathless silence. Maya looked up, her brow furrowing in confusion, only to see the crowd parting like the Red Sea. Walking down the wet, filthy aisle of the fish market were 2 people who looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine cover. The man was dressed in a pristine, custom-made Armani suit, his hair perfectly styled, his Italian leather shoes stepping gingerly to avoid the puddles of bloody water. It was Arthur. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm, wearing a Chanel trench coat and a diamond necklace that caught the harsh market lights, was a stunning, glamorous woman with a cruel, haughty smirk. It was Serena Vance, the daughter of Vanguard Corporation's CEO. Maya's heart skipped a beat, a cold dread washing over her. She quickly wiped her hands on her stained apron, pulling the velvet box from under the register, trying to force a smile despite the sudden nausea twisting her stomach. "Arthur, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at your promotion ceremony," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly as she stepped out from behind the counter. "And who is this?" Arthur stopped a few feet away from her, and the look he gave her wasn't one of love or even recognition. It was a look of profound, visceral disgust. He pinched his nose, waving his hand in the air as if her very existence was polluting his oxygen. "God, the smell is putrid!" he muttered, turning to the woman beside him. "I told you we shouldn't have come here, Serena. It's a health hazard." Serena laughed, a high-pitched, grating sound, and buried her face in Arthur's shoulder. "But darling, we had to do it properly. You can't start your new life as the future CEO of my father's company while being legally tied to a— what does she even do? A fish gutter?" Maya felt the world stop spinning. The air left her lungs. "Arthur, what is she talking about? Future CEO? Your new life?" She took a step forward, extending the velvet box. "Arthur, today is our anniversary. Look, I bought you the watch you always wanted. I saved up for it." "Please, tell me this is a bad joke." Arthur looked at the small, cheap-looking velvet box in her raw, scarred hands, and his face contorted with rage. He stepped forward and slapped the box out of her hands. The box hit the wet concrete, popping open, and the gleaming silver Rolex spilled out into a puddle of fish blood and dirty water. Maya gasped, dropping to her knees to grab it, but Arthur stepped on her hand with his leather shoe, grinding her scarred fingers against the concrete. "Don't touch me with those filthy hands!" Arthur roared, his voice echoing through the silent market. "A Rolex? You probably bought a fake knockoff from a street vendor. You think a watch can make up for the humiliation of being married to you? Do you know what it's like to go to corporate galas and have people ask what my wife does? I had to lie. I had to tell them you were dead because admitting I was married to a stinking fishmonger would have destroyed my career." Maya stared up at him from the ground, tears of agonizing betrayal mixing with the rain on her face. "I gave you everything," she choked out, her voice breaking. "I worked 16 hours a day to pay your tuition. I starved so you could buy suits. I believed in you when no one else did. You didn't give me anything but the smell of dead fish that I can't wash out of my clothes." Arthur spat, pulling a thick envelope from his inner pocket and throwing it directly at her face. The heavy stack of papers hit her cheek and scattered on the wet ground. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed them. Serena's father is making me the CEO, and I am marrying her next month. She's a real woman, an heiress with class, wealth, and power. What do you have, Maya? A bucket of fish guts and a pathetic life." Serena stepped forward, looking down at Maya as if she were an insect. She opened her designer purse, pulled out a thick stack of $100 bills, and threw them into the air. The green paper rained down on Maya, landing in the bloody water. "Here is $10,000, peasant," Serena sneered. "Consider it a generous tip for keeping Arthur company while he was slumming it. Sign the papers, take the trash money, and never show your face near our circle again. If you refuse, my father's lawyers will crush you in court and you'll walk away with absolutely nothing." The crowd of market vendors murmured in outrage, but they were too poor and powerless to intervene against people who looked so wealthy. Maya knelt in the puddles, the freezing water seeping through her jeans. She looked at the ruined Rolex, she looked at the scattered money, and then she looked at the divorce papers. The 5-year bet. It was over. She hadn't lost the bet to her grandfather. Arthur had lost the test. He had failed in the most spectacular, brutal way possible. He had chosen fake gold over a real diamond. The tears stopped. The agonizing pain in her chest slowly froze, turning into a solid block of impenetrable ice. The naive, loving Maya who gutted fish for love died in that puddle. The heiress awakened. Maya slowly stood up. She didn't look at the money. She picked up a bloody fish-gutting knife from the counter. Arthur took a panicked step back, pulling Serena behind him. "What are you doing? Are you crazy? I'll call the police!" Arthur shouted. Maya didn't stab him. She calmly walked to the counter, placed the divorce papers on the cutting board, and sliced her own thumb with the tip of the blade. Using her blood, she pressed her thumbprint onto the signature line of the divorce papers. She picked up the papers and threw them back at Arthur's chest. "Keep your money," Maya said, her voice suddenly devoid of all emotion, echoing with a chilling, aristocratic authority that made Arthur freeze. "And keep your new life, Arthur. But remember this moment. Remember exactly what you threw away today. Because from tomorrow, you won't even have the right to kneel and lick the mud off my shoes." Serena burst out laughing, though it sounded slightly nervous. "Listen to the fishmonger. She thinks she's a queen. Let's go, Arthur. She's gone completely insane." Arthur scoffed, regaining his arrogance. "You're pathetic, Maya. Enjoy rotting in this dump for the rest of your miserable life." He turned his back on her, wrapping his arm around Serena, and they began to walk back toward the entrance of the market where their BMW was parked. But they didn't make it to the car. Suddenly, a deafening, synchronized roar of heavy engines shook the entire harbor. The market vendors gasped and pointed toward the entrance. A convoy of 20 matte black Rolls-Royce Phantoms drove directly into the narrow, dirty street of the wet market, ignoring the traffic laws, completely blocking Arthur's BMW. The sheer display of astronomical wealth and aggressive power made the air itself vibrate. The lead Rolls-Royce stopped exactly 10 feet from where Arthur and Serena stood paralyzed in shock. The doors of all 20 cars opened simultaneously in perfect unison. 40 men in impeccable black suits and dark sunglasses stepped out, forming 2 perfectly straight lines down the middle of the filthy fish market, completely ignoring the slime and fish guts ruining their expensive shoes. They stood at military attention. Then, the rear door of the lead Phantom opened. A man stepped out. He was devastatingly handsome, exuding an aura of absolute terrifying power. He wore a 3-piece suit that cost more than Arthur's entire life earnings. It was Victor Sterling, the ruthless, cold-blooded CEO of Sterling Global and Maya's supposedly arranged fiancé. He didn't look at Arthur. He didn't look at Serena. He unrolled a plush red carpet, throwing it out so it rolled over the bloody puddles, stopping exactly at Maya's rubber boot-clad feet. Victor walked down the red carpet, stopping in front of the stunned fish saleswoman. In front of Arthur, Serena, and the entire gaping market, the most powerful billionaire in the country bowed at a perfect 90-degree angle. "The 5 years are up, Miss Sterling," Victor's deep, resonant voice echoed in the dead silence of the market. "Your grandfather has sent me to bring you home. The private jet is waiting. It is time for you to take your rightful place as the sole heir to the Sterling Empire." The silence that blanketed the fish market was so absolute it felt as though the very rotation of the earth had ground to a sudden, violent halt, leaving nothing but the sound of the freezing ocean wind and the heavy, rhythmic breathing of the 40 elite bodyguards standing at perfect attention. Arthur stood paralyzed, his freshly signed divorce papers suddenly feeling like a death warrant burning a hole through his chest, his eyes darting frantically between the immaculate, terrifying presence of Victor Sterling and the dirty, blood-stained woman he had just discarded like garbage. "Sterling. Miss Sterling?" Arthur stammered, the name tasting like ash in his dry mouth as his mind desperately tried to reject the impossible reality unfolding before him. "Maya, what kind of sick, pathetic joke is this? Did you hire these actors with the money Serena just threw at you? Do you honestly think renting a few cars and some suits will make me regret leaving a fish gutter?" Serena, recovering from her initial shock, let out a shrill, mocking laugh, though her manicured hands were trembling slightly as she clutched Arthur's arm. "Actors! Of course they are actors," she sneered, stepping forward with false bravado. "The Sterling Consortium? The family that literally owns the Vanguard Corporation's debt? Please, if this filthy peasant is the Sterling heiress, then I am the Queen of England. Tell your little theater troupe to pack up before I call the real authorities to have you all arrested for public disturbance." Victor didn't even blink at her shrill outburst. His cold, piercing gaze remained fixed respectfully on Maya, treating the 2 arrogant interlopers as nothing more than annoying insects buzzing around a deity. Slowly, Victor raised his right hand, snapping his fingers once. Instantly, the lead bodyguard stepped forward, opening a titanium briefcase to reveal a solid gold family crest, the undeniable, heavily guarded seal of the Sterling family, alongside a stack of platinum black cards and a localized satellite phone that only heads of state possessed. The color instantly drained from Serena's face, her arrogant smirk collapsing into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror as she recognized the crest from her father's desperate investor meetings. No one could fake that seal without bringing the full, lethal wrath of the Sterling Empire down upon them. Arthur's knees buckled slightly, the sheer magnitude of his colossal mistake crashing down upon him like a collapsing skyscraper as he looked at Maya, truly looking at her for the first time in years, noticing how she stood amidst the filth with a spine of steel and an aura of undisputed royalty that no amount of fish guts could hide. "Maya, wait," Arthur choked out, taking a frantic, desperate step forward, reaching out his hand as if to grab the sleeve of her stained apron. "Maya, if this is real, if you are, why didn't you tell me? We are husband and wife. We can talk about this. I was just angry. I didn't mean the divorce." Before his fingers could even brush the fabric of her apron, Victor moved with terrifying, blinding speed, grabbing Arthur's wrist and twisting it backward with a sickening crack that echoed through the market. sending Arthur crashing to his knees in a puddle of muddy water as he screamed in agony. "Do not dare touch the heiress with your filthy hands!" Victor's voice was a lethal whisper, his polished shoe pinning Arthur's shoulder to the freezing concrete. Maya looked down at the man she had loved, the man she had starved for, the man who had just ground her hand into the dirt, and she felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sorrow, just the cold clinical detachment one feels when scraping gum off the bottom of a shoe. "I gave you 5 years, Arthur," Maya said, her voice echoing with a chilling aristocratic authority that made the entire market hold its breath. "I stripped myself of my name, my wealth, and my power to see if you possessed a heart capable of true loyalty. I built your career with my bleeding hands, and in return you showed me exactly what you are, a parasite. You wanted a wealthy woman to elevate your status? Congratulations. You just divorced the wealthiest woman on the continent. Enjoy the pennies Serena throws at you, because they will be the last things you ever own." She didn't wait for his response. Maya turned her back on him, stepping onto the plush red carpet and walking toward the open door of the Phantom. She paused just before entering, glancing over her shoulder at the horrified Serena, who was hyperventilating, staring at the golden crest. "And Miss Vance," Maya added, a deadly smirk playing on her lips, "tell your father I look forward to attending his little banquet tonight. I hear Vanguard is desperate for the Sterling investment to avoid bankruptcy. It would be a shame if the new CEO of Sterling Global had an objection." With that, Maya slipped into the luxurious, heated interior of the Maybach, the heavy door shutting with a solid, definitive thud that sounded like the closing of a coffin lid on Arthur's future. The convoy of phantoms reversed in perfect synchronization, leaving the harbor as quickly and dramatically as they had arrived, leaving behind a crowd of stunned vendors and a broken, weeping Arthur kneeling in the bloody water, clutching his sprained wrist while Serena stared after the cars, a cold sweat drenching her designer clothes as she realized she hadn't just insulted a fishmonger, she had just declared war on a god. Inside the quiet, soundproof cabin of the Phantom, the smell of fish faded, replaced by the subtle, expensive scent of old leather and Victor's imported cologne. Maya sat in the plush leather seat, looking down at her raw, scarred hands, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Not for Arthur, but in mourning for the naive girl who had died in that market today. Victor opened a hidden compartment, pouring a glass of aged Macallan whiskey and handing it to her with a look of deep, respectful sympathy. "The 5-year contract was a cruel test, Miss Sterling, but your grandfather insisted it was the only way to forge the iron you would need to rule," Victor said softly, watching her down the amber liquid in one burning swallow. "He is dying, Maya. The cancer has spread to his brain. He has held off the board of directors and the circling wolves of the corporate world for as long as he could, waiting for this day. The Sterling Global Consortium needs its Empress." Maya closed her eyes, letting the fire of the whiskey burn away the last remnants of her weakness, replacing the pain of betrayal with a cold, focused determination. "I understand, Victor. The girl who gutted fish is dead. It is time to gut the sharks." She opened her eyes and they were hard, calculating, and ruthless. "Take me to the estate. Call the styling team, the dermatologists, and the tailors. I need to wash the stench of poverty off me. And Victor, review Vanguard Corporation's financial portfolio. I want every debt they owe, every leverage asset, and every dirty secret on my desk in 2 hours." Victor smiled, a rare, genuine expression of pride. "Already done, Miss Sterling, and might I add, Vanguard is currently hosting a massive gala tonight at the Zenith Hotel to announce Arthur's promotion to CFO and his engagement to Serena Vance. They are expecting a representative from Sterling Global to arrive and sign the final approval for their massive bailout loan." Maya's lips curled into a devastating predatory smile. "Perfect. Then we shall give them the guest of honor they deserve." The transformation of Maya Sterling was not merely cosmetic, it was the shedding of a false skin, a brutal, luxurious resurrection that took 6 agonizing hours in the master suite of the Sterling penthouse. A team of world-renowned dermatologists treated the raw, blistering skin of her hands, applying miraculous serums and wrapping them in elegant, elbow-length black silk gloves that concealed the scars while adding an air of dangerous mystique. Hairstylists washed the smell of the ocean from her hair, treating it with liquid gold and caviar masks until it fell in sleek, shimmering obsidian waves down her back. When she finally stepped in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror, the fishmonger was entirely gone, replaced by a breathtaking vision of absolute power and unattainable wealth. She wore a custom-made, blood-red haute couture gown by Alexander McQueen that hugged her curves and flowed like liquid fire around her feet, adorned with a necklace of flawless, pear-cut diamonds that cost more than the entire net worth of the Vanguard Corporation. She looked untouchable, a goddess of vengeance descending from Olympus to punish the mortals who had dared to mock her. Victor entered the room, holding a sleek black folder, and even he, a man made of stone, had to pause and bow his head in reverence at the sheer, overwhelming presence she commanded. "The car is ready, Madam CEO." Vanguard's gala is in full swing. They are currently cutting the cake and awaiting our signature to save them from insolvency. Maya took the folder, her black silk glove fingers tracing the edge of the documents that held Arthur's entire existence. "Let's not keep my ex-husband waiting," she whispered, her eyes flashing with a lethal, icy fire. Meanwhile, the grand ballroom of the Zenith Hotel was a blinding sea of crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the suffocating arrogance of the city's elite, oblivious to the storm gathering just outside their doors. Arthur stood at the center of the room in a freshly pressed tuxedo, holding a glass of Dom Perignon, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking his face in two, his sprained wrist heavily bandaged beneath his sleeve. Despite the horror of the morning, Serena had spent the last several hours desperately convincing him and herself that the display at the fish market was an elaborate, desperate hallucination, a cheap trick orchestrated by a bitter ex-wife who had pooled her life savings to hire a few cars just to ruin their day. "It's mathematically impossible, Arthur," Serena had hissed in the limousine on the way to the hotel, pouring him another drink to steady his shaking hands. If she were the sterling heiress, she wouldn't have spent 5 years smelling like rotting cod. Rich people don't do that. It was a stunt. "My father has spoken to the Sterling board. The new CEO is coming tonight to sign our bailout. Once that money hits our accounts, we will crush that fish gutter for daring to threaten us." Arthur had clung to her words like a drowning man to a life raft, burying his terror deep down and plastering on the mask of the triumphant executive. Now, standing on the grand stage next to Serena's father, CEO Robert Vance, Arthur raised his glass to the cheering crowd, basking in the applause of the city's billionaires, convincing himself that he had made the right choice, that he had finally arrived at the peak of the mountain. Robert Vance stepped to the microphone, his chest puffed out with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate not only the future of Vanguard Corporation with our brilliant new CFO, Arthur, and his beautiful bride-to-be, my daughter Serena, but we also celebrate the dawn of a new era. Tonight, we welcome the new CEO of the Sterling Global Consortium, who has graciously agreed to finalize our massive partnership." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, turning eagerly toward the massive gold-plated double doors of the ballroom, waiting for the mysterious billionaire to make their grand entrance. Arthur puffed out his chest, adjusting his bow tie, ready to shake the hand of the person who was about to make him richer than his wildest dreams. The music swelled, the lights dimmed slightly for dramatic effect, and the heavy, golden doors were suddenly thrown open with a violent, booming crash that silenced the entire room instantly. A dozen sterling bodyguards marched in, forming a flawless, intimidating corridor of muscle and black suits, forcing the wealthy guests to step back in awe and fear. Then, the sound of sharp, rhythmic stiletto heels echoed through the silent ballroom, each click striking like a hammer blow against Arthur's chest. Maya stepped through the doorway, bathed in the spotlight, her blood-red gown trailing behind her like a river of fire, her diamond necklace blinding the onlookers, her face a mask of absolute, terrifying perfection. The crowd gasped collectively, murmuring in awe at her beauty and the sheer crushing aura of authority she projected. But on the stage, the blood instantly drained from Arthur's face, leaving him as pale as a corpse, his champagne glass slipping from his numb fingers and shattering into 100 pieces on the stage. Serena let out a strangled, breathless gasp, her knees buckling as she clutched the podium to stop herself from collapsing, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it bordered on madness. It wasn't a stunt, it wasn't a hallucination. The fishmonger they had spat on, the woman they had thrown pennies at in the mud, was walking down the center of the ballroom as the undisputed master of their universe. Maya didn't look at the crowd. Her cold, lethal gaze was locked dead onto Arthur's terrified face. She walked up the stairs to the stage, the silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight crushing the breath out of the Vanguard executives. She stopped inches away from Arthur, who was trembling so violently he looked like he might disintegrate, and slowly, deliberately, she removed her dark sunglasses. "Good evening, Arthur," Maya said, her voice soft, melodic, and dripping with the promise of absolute annihilation. "I heard you were expecting an investor to save your pathetic little company. I hope I'm not underdressed for the occasion." The shattered crystal of Arthur's champagne glass glinted like scattered diamonds on the polished stage, but no one in the sprawling, opulent ballroom paid the slightest attention to the mess, their collective breath hitching in their throats as they stared in paralyzed disbelief at the scene unfolding before them. Maya Sterling stood under the blinding glare of the spotlights, a vision of terrifying, unattainable power in her blood-red McQueen gown, her presence so overwhelming that the air conditioning in the Zenith Hotel felt suddenly inadequate to dispel the cold sweat breaking out across Arthur's forehead. Robert Vance, Serena's father and the CEO of Vanguard Corporation, completely oblivious to the horrific personal history connecting his new CFO to the woman standing before him, stepped forward with a wide, obsequious smile that looked more like a grimace of desperation. "Miss Sterling, Madam CEO," Robert boomed, extending a trembling hand, desperately ignoring the tense, unnatural silence that had swallowed the room. "We are profoundly honored. Your grandfather's legacy is legendary, and to have you here tonight to finalize the Sterling Vanguard acquisition is the crowning achievement of my career. Allow me to introduce my brilliant new CFO, Arthur, the architect of our new financial strategy, and his lovely fiancée, my daughter Serena." Robert gestured proudly toward the two people who looked as though they were facing a firing squad rather than a business introduction. Serena had practically shrunk behind her father, using his broad shoulders to hide her trembling frame, her eyes darting toward the exits like a trapped animal realizing the cage door had just locked. Arthur, meanwhile, was experiencing a profound, soul-crushing vertigo, his mind desperately trying to reconcile the image of the woman who had scrubbed fish guts from her nails that very morning with the billionaire goddess currently holding the executioner's axe over his entire existence. He tried to speak, tried to form a coherent sentence, perhaps an apology or a desperate plea for mercy, but his vocal cords were paralyzed by a fear so primal it choked him. "Maya," Arthur finally wheezed, the name scraping against his dry throat, sounding less like a greeting and more like a dying man's last confession. Maya ignored Robert's outstretched hand, leaving the older man standing awkwardly in front of the silent crowd, her gaze remaining fixed with laser-like precision on Arthur. She tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes flashing with a cold, predatory amusement that sent a visible shiver down Arthur's spine. "Arthur," Maya repeated, her voice smooth and melodic, carrying effortlessly through the silent ballroom thanks to the acoustics, yet devoid of any warmth. "The architect of Vanguard's new financial strategy. How fascinating. Tell me, Robert." She finally shifted her gaze to the confused CEO, her tone shifting to one of clinical business detachment. "Does this brilliant architect build his corporate strategies the same way he built his education? By relying on the backbreaking labor, the starvation, and the 16-hour shifts of a woman he then discards the moment he no longer needs her financial support?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of elite socialites and business magnates, the scandalous implication hanging in the air like a lit stick of dynamite. Robert Vance blinked, his smile faltering, looking between Maya and Arthur with growing horror as he began to realize this was not a standard corporate greeting. I beg your pardon, Miss Sterling. I don't understand the metaphor. Arthur is a self-made man, a prodigy from a humble background who climbed his way up through sheer intellect and grit. Self-made? Maya laughed, a sharp, crystalline sound that echoed with bitter irony. She snapped her black-gloved fingers, and Victor, standing stoically at the base of the stage, immediately stepped forward, handing her the sleek black folder he had carried. Maya opened it, her eyes never leaving Arthur's terrified face. "Let me illuminate the myth of your self-made prodigy, Robert. Arthur didn't climb, he was carried. For 5 years, I worked in the freezing harbor of this city, gutting fish, inhaling the stench of rotting seafood, ruining my hands, and emptying my bank accounts to pay for his Ivy League tuition, his tailored suits, and the very Rolex he is currently wearing to impress your daughter." The crowd erupted into furious, shocked whispers, the scandal too delicious, too unbelievable for the high society vultures to ignore. Serena, unable to bear the public humiliation a second longer, stepped out from behind her father, her face flushed with a mixture of terror and aristocratic rage. "Shut up! You are lying!" Serena shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Maya, completely forgetting she was screaming at the most powerful woman in the country. "You are just a bitter, crazy fishmonger who stalked him. Daddy, don't listen to her. She's trying to ruin my wedding. Have security throw her out." Robert Vance turned pale, grabbing his daughter's arm and yanking her back, his eyes wide with panic. "Serena, silence! Are you out of your mind? This is the CEO of Sterling Global." But Maya wasn't deterred. She simply pulled a stack of heavily stamped documents from the folder and tossed them casually onto the stage floor, letting them scatter at Arthur's feet. "Bank statements, university tuition receipts, rent payments for the past 5 years," Maya announced, her voice rising slightly, commanding absolute authority. "All paid from the account of Maya Lin, my alias. But more importantly, let's discuss the document Arthur signed this very morning in a puddle of fish blood." She pulled out the divorce papers, the ones still bearing the rusty brown smudge of her own blood print, and held them up for the cameras of the business press that were now flashing frantically. "Arthur divorced me today, Robert, mere hours before this gala, citing my poverty as an embarrassment to his new elevated status as your future son-in-law. He threw $10,000 in my face as severance for 5 years of my life." The silence in the room was now absolute, the kind of silence that precedes a devastating explosion. Robert Vance turned slowly to look at Arthur, his face a mask of dawning realization and utter disgust. "Arthur, is this true?" Robert demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Did you lie to me about your background? Did you hide a wife?" Arthur fell to his knees, not out of submission, but because his legs could simply no longer support the weight of his collapsing world. "Mr. Vance, Serena, please, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. I didn't know who she was." He sobbed, the polished executive facade completely destroyed, revealing the pathetic, cowardly man underneath. "Oh, but that is the beauty of it, Arthur," Maya said, taking a slow step toward him, the hem of her red dress sweeping over the scattered documents. "You didn't know who I was. You only knew the woman who loved you enough to bleed for you, and you found her lacking. You found her embarrassing. You failed the test of character so completely, so spectacularly, that even my grandfather, a man who trusts no one, was shocked by your sheer, unadulterated greed." She looked down at him, her eyes as cold and unforgiving as the ocean depths she had worked beside for half a decade. "You wanted wealth, Arthur. You wanted power. You wanted to sit at the table with the gods of this city. Well, here I am. But you don't get a seat." Maya turned back to Robert Vance, who was sweating profusely, realizing that his company's salvation was currently standing on his stage, executing his future son-in-law. "Mr. Vance," Maya said crescently, snapping the folder shut, "I have reviewed Vanguard Corporation's portfolio. Your company is over-leveraged, drowning in toxic debt, and completely reliant on the Sterling bailout to survive the quarter. I came here tonight to deliver my decision." Robert swallowed hard, clasping his hands together in a desperate plea. "Miss Sterling, please. I had no idea about this man's character. I will fire him immediately. The engagement is canceled. We can salvage this partnership. Vanguard is a profitable enterprise. We just need a bridge loan." Maya smiled, a terrifying, beautiful smile that made Robert's blood run cold. "I am not in the business of building bridges for companies that hire parasites, Robert. I am in the business of acquisitions." She signaled to Victor, who stepped up to the microphone. "As of 8 p.m. tonight," Victor announced in a booming voice, "Sterling Global Consortium has acquired the majority debt of Vanguard Corporation's primary lenders. Vanguard is no longer an independent entity. You are in default. Sterling Global is initiating a hostile takeover, effective immediately." Pandemonium erupted in the ballroom. Shareholders screamed, executives shouted into their phones, and Robert Vance collapsed into a chair, clutching his chest as his life's work evaporated in a matter of seconds. Serena fell to the floor next to Arthur, sobbing hysterically, realizing she had just gone from a billionaire heiress to the daughter of a bankrupt, disgraced former CEO in the span of 10 minutes. "You can't do this!" Serena screamed, crawling toward Maya, her Chanel dress tearing on a piece of broken glass. "You ruined my life over a stupid fishmonger grudge. You are a monster!" Maya looked down at the weeping, pathetic pair on the floor, the two people who had stood in the market that morning and treated her like dirt. She felt a profound sense of closure, the icy block of pain in her chest finally shattering into dust. She didn't feel vindictive joy, she just felt the clean, cold reality of justice. I didn't ruin your life, Serena. I merely accelerated the consequences of your own arrogance, Maya said softly, turning her back on them for the final time. She walked to the edge of the stage, the sea of panicked billionaires parting to let her pass, terrified of the woman who could destroy an empire with a single command. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking back over her shoulder at Arthur, who was weeping into his hands, a broken, destroyed man who had traded a kingdom for a handful of dust. "Goodbye, Arthur," Maya said, her voice carrying a final, chilling note of dismissal. "I hope you like the taste of fish, because without Vanguard, without my money, and without your reputation, you are going to be eating a lot of it." She walked out of the ballroom, her red dress flowing behind her like a banner of victory, Victor and the 40 bodyguards falling into step behind her, leaving the Zenith Hotel in ruins, the ashes of Arthur's ambition settling in the wake of the Empress's return. But as Maya stepped into the cool night air, slipping into the back of her Phantom, she knew the real war was just beginning. The board of directors at Sterling Global were waiting, old wolves who didn't respect a woman who smelled of the harbor, and she had to prove to them that she wasn't just a survivor. She was a predator. The morning sun hit the gleaming, razor-sharp glass facade of Sterling Tower like a spotlight, but inside the executive boardroom on the 80th floor, the atmosphere was as dark and cold as a crypt. Maya Sterling sat at the head of the massive, custom-built obsidian conference table, the very seat her grandfather had occupied for 40 years, feeling the palpable, suffocating weight of 20 pairs of hostile eyes glaring at her from the shadows of the room. These were the board of directors, the old guard, the ancient wolves who had built their fortunes on the coattails of the Sterling Empire, men who had ruthlessly manipulated markets, crushed competitors, and hoarded wealth for decades. To them, the dramatic return of the lost heiress was not a joyous family reunion. It was a terrifying disruption to the delicate, corrupt balance of power they had established during the patriarch's declining health. They didn't see the woman who had publicly executed the Vanguard Corporation the night before. They saw a 25-year-old girl who had spent the last 5 years smelling like fish guts and making terrible romantic choices. A naive child playing dress-up in her grandfather's throne. "This is highly irregular, Miss Sterling," intoned Richard Hale, the vice chairman and the de facto leader of the opposition, his voice dripping with condescension as he adjusted his gold-rimmed spectacles. "While we respect your grandfather's dying wish to see you reinstated, a CEO cannot be appointed simply by birthright, especially one who has been completely absent from the corporate ecosystem for half a decade. Your little stunt at the Zenith Hotel last night was reckless, emotional, and cost us millions in potential synergy with Vanguard." The other board members murmured in agreement, shifting in their leather chairs, sensing blood in the water. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She sat perfectly still, wearing a sharp, impeccably tailored black business suit, her hair pulled back into a severe bun, her scarred hands hidden beneath pristine white silk gloves, a physical reminder that she was a queen who had survived the mud. "Potential synergy, Richard?" Maya asked, her voice low and dangerously calm, echoing the same terrifying cadence her grandfather used right before he destroyed someone's career. Vanguard was a sinking ship, weighed down by toxic real estate assets and a bloated, incompetent executive suite. My stunt wasn't emotional, it was a hostile takeover executed at a fraction of the cost we would have paid to bail them out. I acquired their core logistics network, the only valuable asset they possessed, and liquidated the rest, saving this consortium approximately $400 million in projected losses over the next quarter. She tapped her manicured, gloved finger on the table, the sharp click slicing through the nervous murmurs of the board. "I suggest you review the financial dossiers I placed in front of you before you question my business acumen." Richard Hale's face flushed a deep, angry red as he flipped open the folder, his eyes scanning the numbers, the undeniable, cold, hard data proving that her reckless move was actually a masterstroke of predatory capitalism. But Hale was an old wolf, and he wasn't about to surrender the pack to a young cub without a fight. "A lucky strike, perhaps," he sneered, tossing the folder back onto the table. "But one aggressive acquisition doesn't prove you can run a $1 trillion global consortium. Your grandfather is incapacitated, the stock market is jittery about the succession, and frankly, Miss Sterling, the rumors of your sabbatical are damaging our brand. The public doesn't want a fishmonger managing their pension funds." He leaned forward, intertwining his fingers, adopting a faux sympathetic tone. "The board proposes a compromise. You accept the title of honorary chairwoman, a ceremonial role. You enjoy the wealth, the status, the galas, but the day-to-day operations, the actual executive power, will be transferred to a committee led by myself until you have matured." Maya felt a surge of familiar, white-hot rage burning in her chest. The same rage she felt when Arthur threw the $10,000 in her face, the rage of being underestimated, dismissed, and discarded. But she didn't let it show on her face. She remembered the long, freezing nights at the harbor, hauling crates of ice that weighed more than she did, learning that survival wasn't about screaming the loudest. It was about striking the hardest when the enemy let their guard down. She looked at Richard Hale, really looked at him, remembering the extensive background checks Victor had compiled on every single board member overnight. A ceremonial role, Maya mused softly, leaning back in her chair. "How very generous of you, Richard. You want me to be a pretty hood ornament while you drive my family's legacy into a ditch." She signaled Victor, who was standing like a shadow by the door, and he stepped forward, placing a small, innocuous-looking flash drive on the table in front of Maya. "Let's talk about maturity, Richard. And let's talk about brand damage." Maya picked up the flash drive, twirling it between her gloved fingers like a magician about to perform a deadly trick. "Before I returned, I asked Victor to conduct a thorough, independent audit of the consortium's internal accounts over the past 5 years. Specifically, the years I was absent and my grandfather was undergoing chemotherapy. The atmosphere in the boardroom instantly changed. The arrogant, relaxed postures vanished, replaced by a sudden, rigid tension as several board members exchanged terrified, panicked glances. I found some fascinating discrepancies," Maya continued, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "For instance, Richard, did you know that our Southeast Asian shipping division has been bleeding capital for 3 years, despite record high freight rates? It seems someone has been siphoning off a 5% handling fee into a network of offshore shell companies located in the Cayman Islands." Richard Hale went ashen, the color draining from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. That is an unfounded accusation. I demand to see the proof." "Oh, you will see it." Maya smiled, a chilling, shark-like expression that confirmed she wasn't just a survivor, she was a predator. "Along with the SEC, the FBI, and the international tax authorities. Because those shell companies, Richard, are registered under your wife's maiden name." Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Board members began shouting, some trying to distance themselves from Hale, others demanding the evidence, the entire room collapsing into a frenzy of fear and self-preservation. Maya didn't shout over them. She simply waited, letting the panic simmer, letting the wolves turn on each other until the noise died down, replaced by the heavy, suffocating silence of absolute defeat. She looked at the terrified men, her eyes sweeping over them one by one, letting them know that she had dirt on every single one of them. "I spent 5 years at the bottom of the world," Maya said, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "I learned how to spot rot. I learned how to gut a fish, and I learned that the only way to deal with a parasite is to cut it out." She stood up, towering over the table, radiating the unmistakable, terrifying aura of a true Sterling. "Richard Hale, you are fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal effects and then directly to the authorities. As for the rest of you," she paused, letting the threat hang in the air like a guillotine, "you have a choice. You can either fall in line, support my vision, and help me rebuild this empire stronger than ever. Or you can join Richard in a federal cell. We will vote on my confirmation as sole CEO now. All in favor?" Every single hand in the room shot up, trembling, terrified, and utterly subdued. Maya nodded, a cold satisfaction settling in her bones. "Excellent." Meeting adjourned. As the broken, terrified men scrambled out of the boardroom, desperate to escape her presence, Maya finally let out a long, shaky breath, the adrenaline crashing, leaving her exhausted but victorious. She had conquered the board. She had secured her throne. But as she walked back to her office, Victor falling into step beside her, he handed her a tablet with a grim expression on his face. Madam CEO, Victor said, his voice unusually hesitant. There is a complication regarding the Vanguard acquisition. It seems Arthur is not going quietly into the night. Maya stopped, her eyes narrowing as she took the tablet. What has that parasite done now? She asked, expecting a lawsuit, a pathetic public plea, or perhaps a desperate attempt at extortion. But what she saw on the screen made her blood run cold. A sudden, terrifying realization that the past she thought she had buried in the fish market was reaching out to drag her back into the mud. The headline on a major tabloid gossip site blared in bold red letters, "Billionaire Heiress's Secret Double Life. Former husband reveals shocking truth about Maya Sterling's past." Below the headline was a video interview with Arthur, looking disheveled, tearful, and incredibly sympathetic, sitting on a cheap sofa in a dingy apartment. He wasn't attacking her corporate acumen, he was attacking her character, spinning a web of lies so twisted and manipulative it threatened to destroy the very foundation of her newly won power. "She lied to me for 5 years. Arthur wept on camera, looking like the ultimate victim of a cruel, rich girl's game. "She pretended to be poor to test me, and when I couldn't bear the poverty anymore, when I tried to build a better life for us, she destroyed my career out of petty jealousy. She is a manipulative, cold-hearted monster who plays with people's lives for sport. And she's unstable. She's not fit to run a company. She belongs in a psychiatric ward." Maya stared at the screen, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the tablet, realizing that Arthur, desperate and cornered, had decided that if he couldn't have a kingdom, he would burn hers to the ground. The public, always eager to tear down a powerful woman, was eating it up, the comments flooding in, calling for boycotts, investigations, and her removal. The board might have bowed to fear, but the public answered to outrage, and Arthur had just lit a massive, uncontrollable fire. "Prepare the legal team, Victor," Maya whispered, her eyes burning with a dark, lethal fire. "He wants to play the victim? Fine. I will show him what a real monster looks like." The media firestorm ignited by Arthur's tearful, manipulative interview raged out of control faster than a wildfire in dry brush, turning Maya Sterling's triumphant return into a sprawling global public relations nightmare that threatened to destabilize the newly unified Sterling Vanguard consortium. For 3 days, the internet was a chaotic, toxic battleground. News anchors debated her sanity, tabloids published grainy, out-of-context photos of her working in the fish market looking deranged, and opportunistic short sellers began betting heavily against Sterling Global stock, smelling blood in the water. The board of directors, terrified by the plunging share prices, began to whisper behind closed doors again, wondering if perhaps Richard Hale had been right, if the Fishmonger heiress was too unstable, too emotionally compromised to sit on the throne. Victor, his usually stoic face lined with genuine concern, had advised a strategy of aggressive legal silencing. Sue Arthur into oblivion, hit him with gag orders, and let the PR team issue sterile corporate denials until the news cycle moved on to the next scandal. But Maya, pacing her palatial office like a caged tigress, her white silk gloves discarded, looking at her scarred, calloused hands, refused the easy way out, knowing that a quiet settlement would only validate Arthur's lies and leave a permanent stain on her grandfather's legacy. "No settlements, Victor, no gag orders. If we hide behind lawyers, the public will think we have something to hide," Maya declared, her voice ringing with the clarity of a diamond striking glass. "Arthur wants to play his little tragedy on a global stage. He wants to be the victim of the cruel, manipulative billionaire? Fine. We will give him the biggest audience he has ever had. We aren't going to bury the story. We are going to broadcast the execution." She ordered her PR team to book the largest, most prestigious live television interview slot available, the Sunday night special on the Global News Network, hosted by a notoriously ruthless journalist who had built her career tearing apart corrupt politicians and arrogant CEOs. When Sunday evening arrived, the entire country was glued to their screens, waiting for the spectacular collapse of the mad heiress, while Arthur sat in a squalid motel room, clutching a cheap beer, watching the broadcast with a sickening mixture of terror and triumphant glee, convinced he had finally backed the untouchable billionaire into a corner from which she could never escape. Maya walked onto the brightly lit set looking breathtakingly composed, wearing a simple, elegant navy blue dress, her hair pulled back, completely ignoring the aggressive, probing questions the host threw at her like throwing knives. "Miss Sterling," the host began, her tone sharp and accusatory, "your ex-husband claims you orchestrated a cruel 5-year sociological experiment, lying to him, manipulating him, and then destroying his career out of spite when he tried to improve his station in life. He claims you are unfit, unstable, and dangerous. What is your response?" Maya didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, didn't show an ounce of the anger Arthur was desperately hoping to provoke. She simply looked directly into the camera, her dark eyes piercing through the lens, connecting with millions of viewers. "Arthur is a very compelling storyteller," Maya said softly, a hint of genuine tragic sadness in her voice that immediately disarmed the hostile interviewer. "But a story is only as good as the truth it hides. I did not lie to him to test him. I lied to my grandfather to protect him." The host frowned, thrown off balance. Protect him? From what? Maya took a deep breath, playing the game with a mastery that would have made her grandfather weep with pride. "When I fell in love with Arthur 5 years ago, my grandfather, who controls the family trust, threatened to ruin Arthur's life, to blacklist him from every university, to ensure he never worked in finance, unless I left him. I made the 5-year bet not to test Arthur, but to buy him time, to let him build his career while I lived in poverty, waiting for the day I could return and prove to my family that he was worthy of standing by my side." Arthur, watching the broadcast in his motel room, dropped his beer, his jaw hitting the floor. She was spinning the narrative, turning her cruel deception into a story of epic sacrificial love, painting him not as a victim, but as a man who had squandered the greatest gift a woman could offer. "But that is just a romantic story, Miss Sterling," the host challenged, though her tone was noticeably softer. "It doesn't excuse destroying his career at Vanguard Corporation." Maya smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I didn't destroy his career, he did, and I brought the receipts." She gestured off camera, and a technician handed her a sleek tablet, which she connected to the studio's main screen, projecting a series of documents for the entire world to see. Arthur claims he tried to improve his station in life. What he actually did was embezzle funds. The screen displayed bank transfers heavily redacted but clear enough to read. "While I was working 16 hours a day, gutting fish to pay his rent and tuition, Arthur was secretly siphoning money from his lower-level management job into a private offshore account to fund luxury vacations for himself and his mistress, Serena Vance." The studio audience gasped. The host leaned forward, her journalistic instincts smelling blood. "Furthermore," Maya continued, her voice turning into cold, hard steel, the tragic heroine vanishing to reveal the ruthless CEO. "Arthur didn't just cheat. He committed corporate espionage. He stole proprietary algorithms from his previous employer and sold them to Vanguard Corporation, which is the only reason Robert Vance promoted him to CFO. It was a bribe, a corrupt exchange of stolen intellectual property for a corner office and a wealthy bride." The documents flashed on the screen. Emails, encrypted server logs, undeniable digital footprints that Victor's team of elite hackers had unearthed over the past 3 days. "I didn't execute a hostile takeover of Vanguard out of spite," Maya concluded, looking directly into the camera, staring straight into Arthur's soul. "I executed it to neutralize a toxic, corrupt asset that was harboring a criminal. Arthur isn't a victim of a billionaire's game. He is a thief, a fraud, and a parasite who built his entire life on stolen money and my bleeding hands." The broadcast ended not with a bang, but with the deafening, catastrophic silence of Arthur's world imploding. The live feed cut to commercials, but the damage was irreversible, absolute, and utterly devastating. Within minutes, the internet exploded, the hashtag shifting from hashtag Mad Heiress to hashtag Justice for Maya and hashtag Arrest Arthur. The public, who loved to tear down, loved a righteous vengeance even more. In his dingy motel room, Arthur stared at the black TV screen, his breathing shallow, his hands trembling violently, as the reality of his situation crashed down upon him like a concrete vault. He scrambled for his phone, desperately trying to call Serena, to call his lawyers, to call anyone who could help him. But every number went straight to voicemail, his contacts abandoning him the moment he became radioactive. Before he could even formulate a plan to run, the cheap wooden door of the motel room was kicked open with a splintering crash. Arthur screamed, scrambling backward against the peeling wallpaper as 4 men in dark windbreakers, FBI agents specializing in corporate fraud, burst into the room, their guns drawn, their badges flashing in the dim light. "Arthur Pendleton!" The lead agent barked, grabbing the terrified, weeping man by the collar and throwing him roughly against the wall, slapping cold steel handcuffs onto his wrists. You are under arrest for corporate espionage, grand larceny, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent, which I highly suggest you use, considering the mountain of evidence we just received from an anonymous source. Arthur was dragged out of the room, sobbing hysterically, begging for a lawyer, realizing with a final crushing clarity that Maya hadn't just taken his job or his wealth. She had taken his freedom, locking him in a cage of his own making, a cage far worse than the freezing, smelly fish market he had so thoroughly despised. 3 months later, the dust had finally settled, and the Sterling Global Consortium was stronger, leaner, and more profitable than it had been in a decade, its stock prices soaring on the back of Maya's ruthless, brilliant restructuring. The boardroom, once filled with hostile, whispering wolves, was now completely subservient to her will, the remaining executives terrified of the young woman who had dismantled her enemies with such surgical, terrifying precision. It was a crisp, clear morning in the city, the sun reflecting off the harbor waters when a sleek black Maybach pulled up to the bustling, noisy fish market where the story had begun. The door opened and Maya stepped out, not wearing a blood-red gown or a sharp business suit, but simple, elegant, casual clothes, a pair of dark sunglasses hiding her eyes. Victor stood by the car, watching her with a quiet, respectful pride. The market vendors stopped what they were doing, staring in awe at the billionaire CEO walking among them, recognizing the woman who used to gut mackerel beside them, but no one dared to approach her. Maya walked slowly down the wet, familiar aisle, the smell of salt water and seaweed no longer a symbol of desperation, but a reminder of the crucible that had forged her. She stopped in front of the stained plastic counter where she had spent 5 years of her life, the very spot where Arthur had thrown the divorce papers in her face. A new young woman was working there now, struggling to lift a heavy crate of ice. Maya smiled softly, remembering the agonizing pain in her own shoulders, and gestured to one of her bodyguards. The bodyguard stepped forward, handing the stunned young woman a thick envelope containing enough money to pay for her college tuition and start a business of her own. The girl gasped, bursting into tears of gratitude, trying to thank the mysterious benefactor. But Maya was already turning away, her debt to the harbor finally paid. She walked back to the car, the burden of the past 5 years completely lifted from her shoulders. She had survived the mud. She had conquered the boardroom. She had destroyed the parasite who tried to break her. As she slid into the luxurious back seat of the Maybach, Victor closed the door, leaning in for a moment. "Where to, Madam CEO?" Victor asked, a faint smile touching his usually stoic face. Maya looked out the tinted window at the sprawling, glittering city skyline, her city, her empire, her kingdom. She took off her sunglasses, her dark eyes flashing with a cold, brilliant light, the eyes of an empress who had finally claimed her throne. "Take me to the office, Victor," Maya said, her voice ringing with absolute, unshakable authority. "We have a world to conquer." The Maybach pulled away from the harbor, leaving the smell of fish and the ghosts of the past behind, driving toward a future paved in gold, power, and the terrifying, beautiful reign of Maya Sterling. The end. What a satisfying conclusion. Maya didn't just survive the betrayal, she orchestrated the ultimate public destruction of her enemies, reclaiming her throne and her dignity. Arthur got exactly what he deserved, a jail cell and total humiliation. If you love this story of extreme revenge, undercover billionaires, and face-slapping justice, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button if you cheered when Arthur was arrested, and comment below. What was the most satisfying moment of Maya's revenge? The gala entrance, the boardroom takeover, or the live TV takedown? Thanks for watching. See you in the next epic drama.